All right. Moving on. So Salesforce made another acquisition. They've been on they and both ServiceNow have been on a tear recently, and this time to acquire a company called Convergence.AI. And I have an opinion about this and what it sort of signals on both levels, but I'm curious. We'll start with your take. I mean, good move, bad move, necessary, shrug. I mean, what was your take on this?
I thought it was a useful little acquisition in that, the Convergence AI, they are great at creating these more complex agentic capabilities or imitating judgment tasks that require some sort of judgment thought process. And I think Salesforce really needs that type of capability for their enterprise clients because they are trying to imitate human judgment in more and more areas, not from a holistic perspective, but in very specific slices associated with sales, marketing, service, the customer needs. But they don't have to recreate the human brain. They just have to create a very specific type of human judgment for each task that they are going to end up selling out to the world. So I think it's useful. I'm honestly not sure if this was necessary because Salesforce has a ton of smart people in-house to do AI, quite frankly. But if it's easier to buy than build, then yeah, Salesforce has plenty of money, so why not?
So, well, that actually brings up the point I'm going to make, but I'll start with this. I think there's two big takeaways from this.
Mhm.
For me, the first is that I think we're in this very interesting state, not just ServiceNow and Salesforce, there's others, but we're seeing a whole lot of acquisitions of these smaller AI companies recently. And what I think is interesting is every last one of these, and I'm thinking specifically like this acquisition, the MoveWorks acquisition, a few others,
Mhm.
these almost universally are organizations that approach the market in this holistic fashion, where one of their claim to fame was we can service across these different ecosystems and we're not tied to any one platform. And then what happens is one of these big platforms buys them. And now
Mhm.
suddenly they may still try to make the claim, but we all know it's not really true at that point, right? It's like once you're part of that ecosystem, that's going to be the primary focus. And so what's happening is you're taking the agnostic players in this space and are started taking them off the table. So that it's either going to go one of two ways. Either that's going to be bad for the market in that we're not going to have that sort of universal playing field or player that helps unite everything. Or it's going to be a signal that what we're seeing is this convergence, no pun intended, around, people are picking their platform. Oh, okay, we're a
Mhm.
Salesforce shop, and therefore that's where we hunt everything, or we're wherever else. And I'm not sure which it is. I'm not sure if this is good or bad from that regard. I tend to be skeptical. I mean, I'm torn, right? If I put my CIO hat on again today. Um, I think investing in a major platform has a degree of simplicity and security where it's
Mhm.
like I don't have to worry about some of the moving parts. I can trust in them or just go yell at them if make them work. And I can focus my energies elsewhere. But I'm also sort of naturally skeptical, and maybe it's because I'm old enough to have lived through all the Oracle and SAP and all those
Mhm.
generations where it's like it doesn't sort of end well for you as the buyer in the end because you end up just being, basically locked in with this company. So that was one sort of takeaway, and that is just like I'm curious which way this one's going to land. The other thing I think is interesting, and I look at the ServiceNow's acquisitions recently as part of this too it lays bare a little bit the separation between the marketing hype and the reality underneath the covers. To your point, why did they make this acquisition? Well,
Mhm.
I don't believe they were buying market share. I don't believe they were, eliminating competition. Right?
I
I
think the
think
company is a year old.
right. They clearly needed this technology in some way, and
Mhm.
yet, if you were to hear Benioff talk from stage, they have the most advanced technology and are changing the world. Da 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 da. Right? If you heard ServiceNow talking just weeks before their announcement of the MoveWorks acquisition, you would have been 100% sure that they needed absolutely nothing, and then they go spend billions of dollars to acquire MoveWorks. And both of these are signals of the fact that this is actually a lot harder than it seems, based on all the
Mhm.
marketing hype. And therefore, you end up seeing these acquisitions because they're trying to close the gaps and actually execute on it. And it's hard to do. And so I think it's to me, these are sort of signaling about exactly how much ground there is to cover underneath. And when companies like this are making these huge, and this goes all the way back to Boomi, right? These huge sweeping statements of, oh, we're going to do all of this,
Mhm.
the ability to execute on that is actually quite challenging.
Yeah, one of the interesting notes at the Informatica World show was this comment made while their CEO Amit Walia was on stage, saying that the English is the use of English is actually a very important piece of the agentic experience. And I think of, frankly, how little people, a lot of people know about the English language. Here I've got the elements of style, literally, like as a reminder to me of how to write. But, we've, liberal arts have not been super hot in the 21st century, but there's all sorts of aspects to English across grammar, vocabulary, etymology, semantics, semiotics, all philosophy, like all these higher level structures that exist basically in trying to just cut up words and language in all sorts of ways. And frankly, the people who are making AI often are not well educated in what English actually is as a series of higher level structures. And I think we're going to have to somehow bring that into the computing realm. We might not call it semiotics or whatever, but they're going to create some computer language based version of this metadata layer that is constructed to understand what is happening at that level based on words.
Well, I mean, and I'm no expert, but I mean that's part of what convergence does, right? I mean that's part of what
Right.
they're
It's
doing
part of
is
what
is
they did.
helping.
Yeah, that was smart. Mhm.
Yeah, to add that layer, because I mean right now, right, the LLM approach has basically been, well, the way to decipher all that context is to dump all of this into the system, let the model train off of it, and that's why we quote unquote guess the best word or
Mhm.
idea is simply looking at those constructs and effectively inferring them from that without, you don't have to understand the rules. You can just say, well, I don't know why, but I before E after C, right, or whatever that the
Yep.
thing is, right? And it's like it doesn't understand the rationale behind it. And I think we are seeing that next. We're running against the limits of that. So the next evolution is, well, now how do you start adding layers where there is an actual understanding of the why behind it that complicates it? But it's not where I thought you were going to go, because what I think is interesting around this is that the multilingual aspect of this is actually also, I think, starting to become more of a barrier and
Mhm.
a challenge, because you are correct. Almost everything we talk about right now is an English first approach. And I mean, again, with what we're doing, same thing. And it's just because it gives you the largest market. It's the fastest way of doing this. And once you start dealing with multilingual, it significantly complicates things. So we'll see. I think I think it's and I bring this up not to slam Salesforce or ServiceNow or anybody else, but just as a reminder that despite all the marketing hype, this stuff is difficult. It will remain difficult. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to execute on, and that's why you see these sorts of acquisitions, and you just have to sort of keep it all in mind and balance it out.